growing up in a tough neighborhood, being attacked and burying my friends and losing family members due to gun violence. And eventually I ended up taking a person's life after people cornered me one night. And I was 17, I was charged as an adult, and I was sent off to prison with a life sentence.
For the first 2 years of Chris Wilson's sentence, he fell into deep depression before he began putting together a master plan to map out his future. Years later, he is now the owner of Barclay Investment Corporation and the House of Da Vinci, and the author of The Master Plan, which details his life story and how he turned it around. We are in his art studio to talk to him about the book, his struggle, and his triumphs.
So my book is going to publication February 5th, and it's essentially about my life story, growing up in a tough neighborhood, being attacked and burying my friends and losing family members due to gun violence. And eventually I ended up taking a person's life after people cornered me one night. And I was 17, I was charged as an adult, and I was sent off to prison with a life sentence. I spent some time in solitary confinement. I think the most I've spent was 117 days. And, it's something that I advocate against now, solitary confinement. I mean, folks have deemed it torture, and there's 80,000 men, women, and children in the state facilities across America that are subjected to solitary confinement every day. And so, I mean, it's torture. So how can we expect people to be okay if we're torturing our people while in prison? And for me, it was a nightmare. I mean, you go crazy in solitary confinement. And so my first year in prison, I fell into a deep depression. But I also knew that in my heart, I was a good person. And so I locked myself in my cell for a couple of days, and I wrote up kind of like a bucket list, but I called it my master plan. And it was how I wanted to prove to everyone that I was redeemable, that I could turn my life around, and that I could get out of prison. And so I wrote all these things up, and it was like, I'm gonna educate myself, I'm gonna return back into the community, I'm gonna be a good person. And I sent the list to my judge and to my grandmother, and then I taped one on the wall. And so for over a decade, I just worked. I went to school, got my high school diploma, got my college degree, taught myself to read and write in 5 different languages, and I started mentoring. And eventually, the judge recognized my hard work and gave me an opportunity to return to society. And so they reduced my sentence. And so I ended up spending 16 and a half years in prison. And I've been out of prison for 7 years. Re-entering to society was very difficult for me. Like some of the challenges was just trying to find a job, a place to stay, being able to have enough money to catch the bus or subway to go see my parole officer, which I had to do like twice a week. And so those were some of the challenges, but some of the most painful challenges for me, I think, was just getting out of prison at the age of 32 and seeing people my age who had jobs, had families, had cars, and had lives, and I didn't have that. And so that was something internally that was just real painful, just trying to rebuild my life. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. However, I had a lot of painful memories in D.C. I lost family members and friends, and it was just tough for me to return back into that environment where I lost so many people. The other thing is that the cost of living had increased in D.C. It was expensive. It was just difficult for me, and so I wanted to go to school. And I knew a lot of people in Baltimore, so I decided to move to Baltimore and go back to school and try to do some work in the communities here in Baltimore. My words of advice for folks that are coming home is just exercise patience and don't try to speed into getting your life back together, or just putting yourself in debt. And so I would take it slow and just surround yourself with positive energy and good people. I actually tweaked my master plan a little bit, and so one of my goals that I added to my master plan is that I want my book to be in to get into every prison in America. And so I think we have about 3,000 prisons in America, and so I know there's other Chris's out in the world, people who have made mistakes, people who want to know how they can turn their life around, what they can do when they come home, who they should be surrounding themselves with. And so I put a lot of those tangible takeaways in the book. And, my story's crazy. I've been through some terrible stuff, and I know a lot of people out there who's been through things as well. But if we reach out to people and surround ourselves with interesting and smart people, then we can do some good in the world.